Good morning. Welcome to a talk that's not going to be heavy on theory. We're going to be doing some different activities this morning to get you going and ready to absorb lots of new information today. My name is Jeanine Spence, and I am a 18-year veteran of Microsoft where I ran design and research teams. And part of my job there was getting teams to very quickly come up with as many ideas as possible to get thinking out of the box. And so I'm going to share with you some of the techniques that I used and that you can take and use in your day-to-day work. And this morning we'll also be doing some work together. So if you're sitting alone, you might want to group up with others. It's a big room. We don't need to spread out. We can gather in and try some things out. You might want to pull out a piece of paper and a pen as well, or some other writing device to take notes during the activities. All right. There's a saying about throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. The point here is that there are better ways to come up with good ideas, more structured ways, rather than just cooking a pot of spaghetti and then tossing them out and seeing which is the first good one that comes along. There's some good ideation hygiene, and I'll just get this out of the way because we're not going to go into depth on all of these, but basically, how many in here have been through a brainstorming session that seemed to go on and on and on? Yes. And how many have been through a session where everybody got fixated on some idea and you couldn't figure out why they were talking about it for hours on end? Yes. So ideation is not about a chance to get together, drink some coffee, eat some pastries, and then just shoot the breeze. You need to set really clear goals. Put in time limits. It's hard to keep coming up with ideas and staying focused and concentrated on those. So keep it short and then move on and come back to it later. The other part is balancing solo and group work. And this morning we're going to try out some different ways of doing some of the exercises, but all the exercises or activities I'm going to take you through can be done as solo and in group. And this is one that gets passed over. Everybody says, well, let's just all get in a room and come up with some ideas. You need to balance out that solo reflective time and the group time where you can build on each other's ideas. And the last one, and this is where we'll focus today, is around going wide before the ruts set in. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, think about your brain as a field of snow, fresh fallen snow. And there is neuroscience to this, where before you start digging into a space, you could go any direction that you want to go. So as you put your sled on that hill with fresh snow in front of you, your sled could take pretty much any path it wants. But as you go down the hill more and more times, what sets in? Some ruts. So you get those pathways where things start to sound familiar and it's hard to break out of them. So what we do then is we have activities, we have exercises that we use to trick the brain into thinking widely before we get fixated on one idea. And I'm guessing that given how much talk has been about different types of bias that's been going on recently in different articles and trade journals, that there are you're going to be familiar with different types of bias that can start to set in when you have fixated on an idea, or when a group starts to converge too quickly on an idea. So we're not going to talk about bias today, but just note that this is a way to get out of some of those habits that might affect you. And this is my last theory slide to set the stage and get you ready to think about this. The basic approaches to ideation are around challenging and provoking your own mind and the minds of your group into thinking about things in a new way. You want to go out and find new sources, and there's lots of different ways to do that. There's random association, there's looking at things that are adjacent, lots of ways to find new sources of information. And then look at new ways to put them together. The whole goal of your group doing an ideation session is to come up with a new perspective a new way of looking at things. So the specific techniques that I'm going to review with you today are this list here, and we'll go through them one by one, and we'll try out 4 of them. So biomimicry, new perspectives, new math, mismatch, analogy, reverse thinking, and wild ideas. All right, so let's start with biomimicry. It's quite simply looking for inspiration in nature. It's a big area of medicine right now, and it's a great way to come up with new ways of thinking about your product space. The example here is a very well-known product. Who can tell me what this product is here on that side? Yes. Velcro, yes. It's ubiquitous. It literally came about from burrs that got stuck in the dog's fur. And so this idea of looking for that thing that's in nature, in this case it was an annoyance, and looking at what else could happen with that. Another one. This is probably familiar to most of you, this idea of drawing from nature to evolve into something that is quite different but builds on those same concepts. Okay, so let's take an example here. Same idea, woodpeckers. Woodpeckers turn out to have a really interesting adaptation where the beak is separated from the skull with a bit of cartilage in between that acts as a buffer. Kind of interesting in and of itself. Well, what are places where human beings might need to protect their skull? Well, bicycling, using a helmet. And so the inventor of this product used that concept and put into the helmet a buffer made of cardboard to allow that absorption of any kind of impact there. So again, just a really quick example of how biomimicry can open up some new ways of thinking about a product. Let's take a look at the next one. This is new perspectives. In many parts of Africa and in fact the world, lighting is a challenge, and indoors the quality of the air is very much affected by the fuels that are burned to light the indoors in the evening. And so in this case, a couple of students at Harvard were looking at, well, how could we generate electricity without building, in a traditional sense, a huge grid? And looking around, they found a source of energy right there in the playfields. And so this is actually a product that is in development, using the time that the kids are kicking around the soccer ball to charge it, and then using it as a source of, in a sense, a battery that's brought inside in the evening. And another product using this same idea here, this is installed in Oxford as a test where walking across the sidewalk generates the electricity, or generates the energy that's used to then power lights in the evening. And so there's just that movement of compressing on the panels there in the sidewalk are storing up that energy. All right, now just to get you set, this is going to be the first activity that we're going to do, so you get to try out some new math. It's simply a technique of combining different ideas together to come up with a novel idea. So in this case, you have one technology, a coin press, and another technology, a wine press, coming together as an inspiration for the first printing press, Gutenberg's innovation in that space, which then radically transformed society. But actually literally looking for what are things around you that are operating in a way that might influence how you design your own product. Not sure why it's jumping ahead, but so the formula is really simple for new math. One technology, another technology, some new ideas. So here's another way that could go together. You have an idea of a mobile phone, a GPS, Bing Maps, street lamps, and you could have your way lit as you're passing through an area simply by those different elements coming together. So whether or not this product is something that you would go out and actually build or put into place, when you're doing ideation, that's not the point. You set it aside. And so we're going to practice a little new math. Okay, so this is a good one to get into groups, and you'll do a first pass on your own, and then you'll talk about it in the groups and see if you come up with some different ideas. But first, what I need from everybody is I need some things to put into the new math equation. So toss out some ideas. Any kind of technology, product, thing that would be inspiring, something in the physical built environment. Any ideas? A juice machine. Okay. All right, a juice machine. What's next? I'm sorry, I can't hear. A heater? Okay, a juice machine, a heater, a laptop. Okay, and one more. A mobile phone. Okay, a juice machine, a heater, a laptop, and a mobile phone. Okay, now your challenge is to suspend judgment. This is a way of opening up new ideas. So you have those 4 items, and why don't you take a minute, write down some things that come up for you in that formula. What shows up on the right side of the equation? Okay, do you have some ideas? Now I want you to pair up with somebody else or get into a small group. So some of you are already grouped up. And I want you to share what some of your ideas are. And the goal here now is to build on those ideas. So you came up with some individually. Now as a group, see if you can push that one step further. And again, this is to just get your brain moving in some different directions. So no judgment. Come up with some additional ideas in a group setting. All right, go ahead and take a moment to do that. Okay. All right, I heard a few chuckles, which is good, because this is part of that keeping it light and keeping it moving. All right, who would like to share some of the wild ideas that they came up with? Yes. A vegetable omelet maker. Powered by the laptop, okay. Controlled by the cell phone, okay. All right, so it's an idea, and then you could keep building on it because it might open up some new areas that you hadn't thought of. So what about remote, companies do something similar to this, remote ordering or remote control of things, but then how would that come into the home maybe? So that you could start building on it. And the idea here is that when you're working on your own stuff, you'd pick a set of things that would help inspire and focus you in that area. Okay, another idea. Okay, yes, personalizing a set of vegetables into a juice machine and then heating it to make soup. Yes. Okay, anything else? Yes. Okay, yeah, so a laptop interface. So when you wake up, something tied to your alarm on your phone, you wake up, it automatically triggers the juice machine to go, which fixes the problem that fixed timers have on like coffee machines, right? You set the timer, but then if you oversleep, your coffee's cold or has been sitting there for too long, right? So just when you wake up, the juice machine makes your perfect juice. Okay. All right, so you get the idea of how you can use this, and the examples that we had up here, this is a real example. This was the source of inspiration for Gutenberg, thinking about the printing press. And then this is an example from a group that was doing some ideation around different ways of using Bing Maps. So what are other ways that you could anchor in the product that you have or the technology that you have and expand out? All right, on to the next one. Mismatch. This is a way of using what you observe very carefully in the environment around you to identify some new opportunities. And the example that I have here is for an elderly person, managing their medication is really overwhelming. And there's a lot of sorting and carefully organizing the pills that go into this as a way to manage reminders or to make sure that you're getting the right dose or the right set of things at once. And anyone who has helped elderly parents understands that, or anyone dealing with a chronic health condition understands the complexity of that and just the day in, day out relentlessness of it. Well, in the middle image, it's an image of an interim setup that was produced by Target stores in the US by putting special labels on the different bottles so that you could match up and you knew which ones to use at which time. Helped things out a little bit, but the real innovation came with the image that's on the right, and that is a product called Pill Packs. And what they did is they looked at the situation where an elderly person is trying to figure out which medications to take when, and literally put them all into one packet at a time with all the directions right on it. And so as you go through the day, you can just pull out, tear off one pack, and take your medication. So that company, PillPack, does all the organizing for the patient, and so then you just pick it up to go. Now, an interesting thing that happened with this is that, yes, there's a market for people who are managing complex medical or medicine regimens, but the market that they discovered was the road warrior, the person who's on the road all the time, who wants to take vitamins with them, who wants to take medication with them, and just grab a few packets and go. And so now people are using pill packs as a way to organize their vitamins so that they don't have to open up a bunch of different bottles at a time. So this is an example of how mismatch in a particular setting, something that you observe that's really hard for people to do, and how that can open up some new product ideas. The next one I want to talk about is analogy. And there's an activity that you can do, and we're going to all do it here together. It's called ISA. So if you say that your company is like a river, what does that trigger for you in terms of thinking about your company in a different way? So if you say your company is a river, well, maybe it might nourish all the customers in its path. It might flow around obstacles, transport fertile ideas down into the valley and spread them out over a large area. Be unstoppable, surge in a storm. And then for mature rivers, wind gracefully. Now, this can be a little bit humorous, but it can help you start to think about things in a different way. So again, this is all about unblocking yourselves to come up with new ideas. All right, so let's do a little activity around this. And this one is going to be again, individually, you're going to work for just a moment and try it out. So if your project is a butterfly, it would, and let's say, come up with 3 different ideas about what your project would be like, what characteristics or attributes if it were a butterfly. All right, who would like to share out some thoughts? Yeah. Produce something graceful. Mm-hmm. It would start out early? Oh, it'd start out ugly. Okay, yes. It would start out ugly and become beautiful. Yeah. Other thoughts? Attract attention from bystanders. Okay. That you could start to see, okay, that might be something we want to think about with our product. Yep. And starting out ugly is certainly how it feels, doesn't it, when you're starting out on a project? Like, oh, this is never going to come together. Okay. Fly fast. Mm-hmm. Fly fast and lightly on the wind. Yeah. Okay, so to give you an idea of how you can use an external prompt and do this activity of ISA, again, to open up your thinking. So you can pick any image from nature. And a lot of products do try to use this technique to really think about things in a new way, looking to the source of inspiration from, say, shark skin that drove some innovation a few years ago in swimsuits. Using the shape of different animals as a way to get inspired about aerodynamics. So ways to think about how about your project or your company in some new ways can open up different avenues for coming up with ideas. Okay. All right, and then here's another one. And this one is really fun. Because it's not something we normally do. It's this idea of reverse thinking. So it's looking for unexpected insights where you might have an original product. You're looking at this. In this case, it's a beautiful turned wooden bowl. And then you're looking at, okay, well, how was that bowl manufactured? And it turns out there's a lot of shavings that come off of the wood as it's being manufactured. So this is an idea of the reversing around what you thought was the most valuable part of the product. And in this case, the shavings are a byproduct. Well, then they were turned into a product that's common, a pressed, compressed wood shaving log that became really common. So looking at something that was being thrown away or the thing that was being taken away from the product that you thought you were focused on at first. Another way to use this reverse thinking is to think about a situation where you think, oh, it's working pretty well. Can't come up with any ideas. And this is a story that actually came out of a well-functioning medical clinic. Everybody got together and they said, okay, we're going to brainstorm about how we're going to improve our clinic. Everybody says, well, we can't think of anything because we're actually pretty good. Where are the leaders in this area? So we don't have to do anything different. We're already doing things better than most people are. Most clinics are following us. Okay, well, should we all go home? Except then by using reverse thinking and thinking, well, how can we make it worse? What they did was they were able to find those areas in which innovation would actually help them leap ahead even further. And so if an emergency room at a hospital was to be made worse, you'd make longer waits. You would have uncomfortable chairs, lots of forms to fill out, no privacy in the waiting area, and not knowing what's happening. When are you going to be seen? When is it going to be your turn? Has anybody ever experienced any of these things in a medical situation? Yeah. But each of those clinics or hospitals where you were probably thought they were doing a pretty good job. And so by reversing the thinking, it helps you loosen up and look for those places where maybe you could get a little bit better. And then just to point out the obvious, the goal is not to make the clinic worse. The goal is to find those areas where there's something that could be improved, just in case anybody missed that. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to try this out a little bit, and this time you're going to work in a group, and you're just going to talk. It'll be a good amount of noise in the room. You're just going to talk with each other, and we're going to use reverse thinking. So here, buying a train ticket is a pretty darn good process, especially compared to some other places. I was just recently in Toronto, and the machines there, they're actually, some of them are really quite funny because users have the commuters have taken to putting their own instructions on different signs because they're so confusing. So you don't have that situation here. So I'm going to have you guys try a little reverse thinking about, well, if you were going to make it worse, what would you do? And are there any of those points where you think, there could be some improvements in that? Okay, so just take a moment, talk in your groups, toss some ideas out with each other. Okay, so what are some ways to make it worse? No ticketing machine. Okay, in what way would that make it worse? Okay, so then you have to buy it like on the train or buy it in person at a kiosk? Yeah. Um, Other ideas, how to make it worse? Randomly crash the machines? Okay, yes. Cash only. No change. Make it really hard to enter a mixed group of passengers where you have adults and children traveling together. Okay. Difficult destination selection. Yeah, and so you get the idea here by really challenging yourself to look at where, where are some ways to make it worse, then you could say, oh, well, actually, could some of those areas, even though they work pretty well, could some of those things be made better? And then once you start uncovering some of those areas to look at, this is where you would tie in with getting feedback from users, from commuters. So what different types of mixed groups travel together? What does that start to look like? What's the situation of a parent traveling with young children having to get a ticket? And so then you start to bring in that customer research to look at those areas now that you've triggered yourself into looking for them. So no change. Well, what is that situation? Do people carry around a lot of change in their pocket? Maybe they used to, probably they don't anymore. So how much of a challenge is that? What kinds of cashless opportunities are there? And the ideas of recharging, having a rechargeable card and all of that have come up, but it gives you an opportunity to go back and look at customers to see what's going on. Crashing the machines. Are there enough machines in there? Are you looking at the situation at peak rush hour? Are there other ways to alleviate a system or where there might be a bottleneck if a machine does crash? What are redundancies to get the machines going more quickly? So it's a technique to help you unblock if you think, well, you know what, we're actually already pretty good. Our product's a market leader. What more could we possibly do? And there's always opportunities to keep opening it up and help yourself understand areas to investigate further. All right, here is the last one that we're going to try out today, and it goes back to the classics. This is around brainstorming, and this is just simply called Wild Ideas. And I'm going to go over a few guidelines on this and take a little bit of time to set this up, because this is a place where this is what people generally think of when they think of ideation. They think of brainstorming wild ideas. And as became very clear at the beginning of this morning, this is not done very well, very often. You get into situations where people are just throwing random stuff around and you feel like you haven't made progress. But wild ideas can be an effective tool, just like any of these other techniques can be, if you stay really focused on your topic, really understand what is the goal of that brainstorming session. What are you coming up with wild ideas around? And keep it narrowly focused. The other thing is to really set a time limit. In a group or even as an individual, you really only have bursts of a few minutes or 15 minutes maybe, where you're really able to keep pushing those ideas forward. And after that, the productivity just drops off. So sitting in a room for all day brainstorming never works for anybody. People start checking their email. They're like, well, I just want this over with. I'm just going to go with George's idea over here, and then we're done. And that's too bad. The other part is that it's about quantity. And so this is a mistake that's commonly made with brainstorming, is that you start judging each idea. So somebody comes up with an idea, and then everybody wants to jump in and debate it. That's not the time, that's not what you should be doing during brainstorming. It's pretty simple, just come up with the ideas. You'll have plenty of time to judge them later and to evaluate them later. And the reason that you go for quantity is because there's something that starts to happen after a certain amount. You start to actually get into those new ideas, but if you stop with a few and you start judging them, you never get to those new ideas using this technique. And then part of it also is about listening to the ideas of others and letting yourself cross-pollinate some of those ideas. Okay, so we are going to try it out, and again, we'll work in a group, and what you're going to do is you can write things down if somebody has a way to write down something quickly, or just try to keep track. And your idea is to go for volume and to go fast. And when you're doing this in a group, you have one person who's writing. And so whoever can write quickly. So when you take this back and use this technique, you'll have one person who's the scribe. And your point is to come up with as many ideas as possible. Now, the image I have up here, is this familiar to everyone? This is a curb cut. So on the edge of a sidewalk where the curb has been cut down originally to allow passage for wheelchair users. Is this familiar to everybody? Okay, all right. So what your challenge is, list as many ways you can think of, and then we'll give you a moment to do this. We'll give you about, let's say, 30 seconds to brainstorm together as quickly as possible all the new uses for activities that benefit from curb cuts. Okay, go. Okay, I'm going to stop you there. I can hear some of you are still coming up with more ideas. Who would like to share out something that was unexpected, and then something, or how many did you come up with in that short period of time? Automatic drone delivery. Okay, so a drone on wheels, automatic drone delivery. That is one I have not heard before. Okay, anybody else? Unexpected ideas. To turn your car? Okay, yep. A practicing ramp for skateboarders. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, rainwater to flow into the street. Okay, yeah, so then this is just to give you an idea of how you can use a technique of just pouring in a bunch of ideas, and then you could pause later and evaluate, okay, is this something that we need to consider or not? But the idea to just generate a whole bunch of ideas, and so setting a very tight time limit of a minute, 2 minutes on a very focused topic. So instead of curb cuts, you would choose something specific to your product area, so a challenge that you are currently facing. All right. So I'm going to go back to, I'm not sure why my remote is being so jumpy this morning. It had maybe had too much coffee. All right, so I'm going to go back to the original place where we started. The whole point of this is to go wide and come up with those ideas before you get in a rut. Other challenges to brainstorming and lateral thinking or ideation are when the boss comes in the room and says, well, this is my idea. You guys come up with other stuff, but really this is the idea we're going to go with. You're like, okay, well, what's the point, right? Or that you get fixated on something and you keep going down a path and nobody says, whoa, I think we're off topic here. Let's go back to what our original goal is. Or that you get into a room and everybody just kind of meanders around with different ideas, or people start talking at length. And so the point here was to really to help you understand that there are specific techniques you can use. They're easy to use. You tried them out here in the room, and there's nothing mysterious about them. And there's lots of places online you can go to just come up with different ideas. But again, have a very specific, focused goal. Set time limits, reserve judgment for later, and find ways to change your point of view on these things. So just in summary, these are the ones that we covered today: new math, analogy, reverse thinking, and wild ideas you got to try out. I encourage you to go and try them out with your colleagues and continue your great innovation. All right, thank you very much, and enjoy your day.